Ethan Walker stayed at the Queen and felt his chest tighten like a drum. The room smelled of hot metal and rain. The daughter he had chased sat between them, small and steady. Her eyes watched Ethan with a calm that made him feel both proud and very afraid. Queen Jalara did not move like a leader who wanted to punish. She moved like a mother who had kept a ledger for grief. Her hands folded in front of her. The robe at her shoulders looked like maps of long wars. She looked closely at the child, and then at Ethan. "You touched what I would have hidden," she said. Her voice was low, and every word carried weight. "Tell me why." Ethan thought of a night he had found the three on the freighter. He remembered the smallest pressing its face to his chest and sleeping like a child who trusted the world for the first time. He thought of his father's voice and of welding metal by hand. The words came simple and true. "They were alone," Ethan said. "They needed a hand. I could not leave them." A long silence followed. The Queen's face did not show fury. It showed a long counting of days and debts. She watched Ethan as if he were a book, and read a line she had not expected. Queen Jalara told a story then. She spoke of a sickness that had taken part of her line. She said that centuries ago, a plague struck the royal children. The Queen had hidden 3 daughters away in secret crates and closed the records. She had meant to keep them safe until the empire healed. But spies and old laws had tangled the secret into danger. The Queen's voice carried old sorrow. "We keep line," she said simply. "We keep memory. To lose a line is to break a promise to our dead." Ethan listened and felt the weight of history settle into the room. He did not understand all of it. He understood, though, the sound of a mother who had lost and would not lose again. "Why give them back now?" Ethan asked. "Why not keep your law?" Queen Jalara looked at the daughter who had been taken, and then at the other 2 who had curled under blankets in a soft crate near the door. "Because to hide them forever is to steal a life," she said. "Because the world changes. Because I wish to see what trust might do." The Queen folded her hands. "I will not burn a world for my grief," she added. "But the law asks for a choice. I offer it now." She moved closer and touched the small daughter's head the way a human might touch a child's hair. The small one looked at Ethan and then at the Queen. In that look Ethan saw something like an answer. It was simple. It was a breath. Queen Jalara's offer surprised many. She proposed a bargain that no one had expected. The daughters would live where they could learn both people's ways. Ethan, the man who had found them, would be their guide in human life. The Queen would teach them the old memory songs and the weight of Jalalo. The exchange would become a new kind of treaty, not written only by lawyers but sealed by a promise that a human voice would help shape royal hearts. Back on the station, the council met in haste. President Claire Morgan and Admiral Thomas Briggs argued in crowded rooms. Some wanted to sign the bargain and call it a victory for peace. Others feared that taking royal children into human care would be a weakness. Protesters filled screens and markets. Some cheered, others threatened. The world waited with a slow, held breath. Ethan sat in the quiet after the Queen's offer and felt the choice like a soft blade. He had no idea how to teach royal children to be human. He had no training to raise rulers. He had only a stubborn heart and the small, real care he felt when a child curled on his chest. He said yes. The words were small, but they carried like a bell. The Queen nodded, and a clerk in her hold began to write the first lines of a treaty that would list not only trade and ports, but also a promise. 3 children would live a life with both names and both songs. The Queen watched Ethan with something near gratitude. The rescue that had burst into the Queen's palace ship ended not in chains, but in a new ritual. The Queen and the human leaders signed a simple passage. The daughters would be given a choice when they were older, and until then they would be raised with both her memories and Ethan's small, stubborn ways. The treaty surprised commanders and bankers alike. It startled war councils. But in the long halls the bead Claire had been given glowed like a small truth. When Ethan left the palace ship, the sky above them was quiet. Ships had not yet unrolled for parade or threat. People watched feeds and argued, but something had shifted. A queen had chosen a promise instead of fire. A human had chosen care instead of fear. Ethan walked back to his ship with 3 small lives at his side, and the Queen's promise in his hands. Dr. Sarah Hayes waited at the dock, tired and smiling. Commander Leah Ortiz and Lieutenant Jason Cole waited too. They had fought with blood and wit, and now they served a softer task. In the months that followed, the daughters learned small human things. They learned to hold a cup and to laugh at a clumsy joke. They learned to sweep rust from a hull and to sit in a room where people argued without shouting. In return, Queen Jalara sent memory beads, small, glowing tokens of song that let humans hold a picture of Jalar homes, rain on amber terraces, the sound of memory song that taught patience and the weight of law. The galaxy watched and adjusted. Trade shifted. Old enemies whispered. New children learned to speak two names. Ethan spent quiet nights teaching them how to fix a broken bolt and how to tell a true story. He found he liked telling stories. The small hands that once curled at his chest now took his fingers and learned to write a name in the dust. In the end, what changed the galaxy was not a fleet or a law. It was a human who had chosen to protect a small life when no one else watched. The queen kept her line. The daughters kept their choice. The world kept a new kind of promise, one made by a man with a scar and 3 small, stubborn hearts. Captain Marcus Hale stepped inside like the room belonged to him. He did not smile. His coat was dark and wet. Behind him stood Sergeant Louis Vega, Lieutenant Noah Grant, and Corporal Jenna Brooks. They moved with sure steps. Their boots left wet prints on Ethan's floor. Ethan kept his hand on the bench. The small visor hummed on Nyla's head. The sound was soft. It filled the small room like a sleeping thing. "Mr. Walker," Captain Hale said. He spoke with a voice that cut the air. "We represent a federal program. That device is now government property. You will hand it over. You will come with us." Ethan looked from the captain to the visor. He could not let them take it. He thought of Nyla's small laugh, of the first time she had called a lamp star. He thought of code burned into the chip like a secret. "No," Ethan said. His voice held a tired calm. "I built this for her. She is not property." Captain Hale's eyes did not change. "You do not understand what that device is," he said. "It interfaces with non-human neural patterns. It is dangerous if left in private hands. We have authorization." Dr. Sarah Price stepped forward. She had come as a friend and a scientist. Her hands were empty. She had a badge, thin and official. "Captain," she said, "I helped advise Ethan. This is not a weapon. It's a simple sensory aid. We can study it. No need for force." Lieutenant Noah Grant smiled a small, flat smile. "Dr. Price, we appreciate your input, but this is a national concern. Compliance will make things cleaner for everyone." Maya stood beside Ethan, jaw set. She put a hand on the bench. Her face was fierce in a soft way. "You can't just take a living thing," she said. "Nyla is a person." Corporal Jenna Brooks moved close to the bench and tapped a slim tablet. She waved the screen like proof. On it was a document with official stamps and a legal code. The paper looked real. The paper smelled like power. "This is a lawful seizure," she said. "Step back, Mr. Walker." Ethan shook his head. He did not step back. His throat tightened. He felt anger like heat. Captain Hale took a quiet breath. "No one wants to hurt anyone," he said, "but this thing could change balance. Hand it over." Ethan glanced at Nyla. She sat very still. Her fingers curled around the edge of the crate. The visor's lights pulsed like a small heartbeat. Suddenly Nyla's head turned. The visor sent a pattern. Her eyes did not blink, but her mouth moved like someone tasting wind. She whispered a sound. It was a short sound. The word had no meaning in any human tongue Ethan knew. All 4 soldiers froze like statues. Their hands stayed half-raised. The night outside seemed to hold its breath. Even the rain slowed in the street. Captain Hale's eyes widened just a fraction. His breath hitched. He looked at the others. Sergeant Vega's face had gone pale. Lieutenant Grant's smile dropped. Corporal Brooks' fingers stopped on the tablet. Ethan did not understand why. He did not know what Nyla had said. He stepped closer to her. "Nyla," he asked in a near whisper. Nyla looked at him. Her voice was small but clear. "Quran," she said. The word rolled out like a small bell. Captain Hale blinked hard. He swallowed. He moved like a man trying to hold himself steady. His jaw worked. He had seen many things. Yet something in that single word dug into him like cold. "State your name," he said to Ethan, but his voice had a new edge. It was softer than before. Dr. Sarah's hand went to her throat. Her face shifted from calm to something like fear. She knew some old languages. Years ago she had read rare records. The word Nihilus had matched a broken entry she had seen once in a sealed file. It meant, in those old notes, stop, but not the small stop of a hand. It meant hold still in the old way used by shiplocks and control nodes long dead. Ethan felt his skin prickle. He reached for the visor's band to steady it. His fingers brushed the warm contact. Nyla held his wrist like a friend. Captain Hale tried to take a step forward. His muscles would not obey. His mouth formed a sound like he wanted to shout orders, but no sound came out. Sergeant Vega's arm hung in the air, halfway to his sidearm. Lieutenant Grant's hand had a tattoo near the thumb. The tattoo seemed to tremble. Everyone in the small room watched the pause widen. The noise of the city seemed far away. Ethan's breath came hard. He could hear his heart. Release him. Captain Hale wanted to say. He tried to command. The words came out slow and distant. He looked at his team, his training, and his badges. None of it moved them. Maya pulled forward and gripped Ethan's elbow. "We need to move," she said. She sounded urgent, but her voice was steady. "Now!" But just then a small mechanical click sounded from behind the captain. Corporal Brooks' tablet slid from her fingers as if pushed by an unseen hand. The legal paper fluttered down, and in the paper's shadow, a tiny device blinked. It was a stun unit. Lieutenant Grant found his voice enough to shout one quick order. "Deploy!" Then the word Nyla had said echoed again in the room, soft and certain. The stun device failed to fire. Its light blinked and died. Captain Hale's eyes watered. His body stiffened like iron cooling. Ethan did not waste time. He lifted Nyla from the crate with careful, quick hands. She did not resist. Her face was pale but calm. He wrapped a coat around her small body. Dr. Sarah moved to his side and offered a hand with a small keycard. "Back door," she mouthed. Her eyes asked for trust. Ethan did not ask. He followed Dr. Sarah through a narrow path to the back of the shop. Behind them, the 4 soldiers stood like figures in a painting. Their faces were still, their minds held by a single unseen thread. The back alley smelled of wet metal and old leaves. Maya pushed a heavy bin near the gate, and they slipped behind it. Ethan held Nyla close. The visor hummed like a sleeping song. They paused when the alley opened to the darker side street. Ethan looked back once. Captain Hale stood in the doorway, face gray and empty. The night light pooled around him. Ethan realized then that they had not so much escaped as stepped into a new kind of war. Whatever Nyla had said had reached something far older than law or badge. It had touched a memory in steel and blood. He tightened his grip on the visor case and stepped into the wet night. Ethan ran without looking back. Rain cut his face. The visor case bumped against his side. Nyla walked beside him, small and sure, the coat pulled tight around her. Dr. Sarah moved fast, her breath sharp in the cold air. Maya kept watch behind them, eyes burning red where the street light hit. They crossed alleys and jumped low walls. The city felt like a maze of wet paint and metal. Ethan's heart hit his ribs like a hammer. He had never run so fast in his life. He had never felt so afraid. Behind them, distant boots rang out. A drone's light swept over a roof and then turned away. Ethan thought they had lost the men in black. He hoped. The hope hung thin. They reached a small safe house Sarah had once used for field work. It was a low building with one window and a back door that stuck. Sarah forced the door with a keycard she kept hidden in her coat. The inside smelled of old books and coffee. Ethan set Nyla on a couch and breathed. "Can you hide her?" Ethan asked. His voice was raw. Sarah nodded. "I know a place," she said. "Old contacts. Not all of them like the program, but they hide people." Her fingers shook a little as she tapped a small panel on her wrist. "We have to move now." They wrapped Nyla in a heavier blanket. She did not speak much. Her breathing was steady. She still wore the visor. Ethan did not want to take it off. He felt the small hum like a living thing. He looked at Nyla's hands. They held nothing but a simple toy bird Ethan had made. Maya stayed to watch the doorway. "I'll go with Ethan," she said. "You get Nyla to the safe place. If anyone stops you, run." Ethan wanted to argue, but the truth was loud and plain. He could not hide her forever. He had to find out why Captain Hale's men cared so much. He had to learn who Nyla's people were. He had to fix what he had started. Dr. Sarah gave him a map and a note. "There's a hidden archive under the old transit hall," she said. "It holds sealed records. If Nyla's species is listed, we'll find it there. Find the archive code. It may tell us what that word of Hayes did." Ethan folded the paper and put it in his pocket. He kissed Nyla on the forehead. Her skin was cool under his lips. "I'll be back," he said. His voice shook. They left in 2 teams. Ethan and Maya went one way. Sarah took Nyla in an old van with tinted windows. The rain washed the city like a white curtain. For a moment, Ethan felt a strange calm. He had a plan that made the fear softer. A hard light cut through the calm. A drone came down low and fast. It did not search now. It hunted. Ethan had no time to hide. Soldiers in dark coats spilled from the shadows. Captain Marcus Hale walked like a man who had been reborn true to a duty. Ethan felt a blow to the back of his head. He crumpled and went black. When he woke, he was on a cold floor. His hands were cuffed to a bench. The cell was gray and small. A thin strip of light came from a high window. The visor case was gone. His mouth tasted of metal. His head ached. "Ethan Walker," a voice said behind bars. A guard stood over him. He looked older than Ethan had hoped. "You made a bold choice. How is Nyla?" Ethan said. His voice came out rough. The guard did not answer at once. He looked at Ethan like he weighed him. "Taken," he said finally. "They moved her to a facility outside the city. High security. You'll see the papers soon enough." Ethan felt the room drop. His hands pulled at the cuff until his skin burned. "Why?" he asked. His voice was thin. The guard shrugged. "Because people who built your thing said it was a risk. Or maybe they like holding keys. Either way, you are small and they are larger." Ethan lay back on the bench and stared at the ceiling. He thought of the visor humming on Nyla's head. He thought of the words she had said, Quran, and how it had frozen soldiers like trees. He thought of the archive and the map Sarah had given him. He had lost time. He had lost Nyla. A soft knock sounded at the door. The guard stepped out and left the lock loose like a small mistake. Ethan's breath hitched. He listened. The corridor outside was muffled with rain and boot steps. A hand slid through the bars and pushed a small folded note near his fingers. Ethan opened it. The note had a single line. "We don't like them either. Meet the old station, West Tunnel, at 1-2. J." Ethan did not know who J was. He did not care. He tucked the note into his shirt and watched the corridor. When the guard returned, Ethan swallowed hard and pretended to be tired. He watched the key change hands and memorized a pattern. When the moment came, he acted like a man who had nothing to lose. He moved fast. He used a loose bolt snap from the bench. He slid the cuff off his wrist and picked the lock of the door with hands that shook but would not stop. He ran down the hall, bare feet slapping the cold floor. He did not look back. Outside, the rain had slowed to a fine mist. The city felt quieter and farther than before. Ethan ran toward the old transit hall, toward the West Tunnel. He thought of Nyla and of the visor's hum. He thought of the word that froze men. He thought of the archive under the transit hall and of the sky above. When he reached the tunnel, he slipped inside. The air smelled of old wires and warm stone. He moved through the dark path until he reached a heavy iron door with a rusted lock. He pressed the note to his chest like a promise and turned the old knob. As the heavy door opened, a piercing alarm rose. It cut through the tunnel like a blade. Red lights threw long shadows. Ethan's chest tightened. He pushed forward into the archive vestibule. Outside, above the city, the night sky went cold. A single bright point sank and dimmed like a light dying. In the tunnel, the alarms howled and the old archive door started to grind open. Ethan stood frozen for a breath. The world had changed in a single sound. Ethan pushed deeper into the archive. The red lights threw hard lines across the metal doors. Dust rose in thin waves. The old station smelled of rust and paper and time. He held the visor case close. The note from Jay burned in his pocket like a promise. He had no time to be afraid. Fear moved slow. He moved faster. Each footstep sounded loud. The alarms kept a steady cry. The vestibule opened into a long room of racks and glass cabinets. Old machines slept under gray sheets. On one wall, a faded sign read, Systems Archive, restricted. Ethan's hand shook as he slid off the sheet from a terminal. The screen woke with a tired glow. He typed the code Dr. Sarah had given him. The log opened in slow lines. Names scrolled that made his head swim. Ships, routes, old commands in a language he did not fully know. He kept reading. The Visor's pattern, those beats, the sounds Nyla's mind read, matched one of the files. A line of text said, Lock Sequence, Visual Audit Protocol, Quran. Ethan's breath hitched. The word Nyla had said. The same word sat in an old command. The archive showed blueprints. The blueprints were for something huge, not a simple tool. A navigation lock, a gate between stars. The note said the locks use living minds as keys. They use sight, sound, and pattern to open old systems made by vanished fleets. He read faster. A map unfurled in the file. Not a small town map. A wide map of the sky. Lines connected points that were not on any modern chart. A pattern of stars, old and new, that formed a path. The path led to a place marked only as Anchor. The anchor had a symbol that looked like an eye. Ethan felt cold. He thought of Nyla, of the Visor, and of the way those 4 soldiers had frozen like trees. The Visor had not only given sight. It had matched something old and dangerous. It could open locks left by empires that no longer walked the stars. He did not want weapons. He wanted Nyla to see sunrise. But the file did not care for his wish. The file only showed that now others would come. People who wanted anchors could use the Visor to reach old stores of power. People with ships could take whole worlds. The alarms grew louder. Footsteps pounded above. Ethan pulled the Visor from its case. His fingers remembered the code he had written. The processor still hummed with life. He placed the Visor on the table and fed it the archive sequence. Across the city sky, a low thunder began. Ethan looked up through a narrow skylight. A shape moved into view. It was not a single ship. It was a dark hull the size of a mountain. It cast a shadow that swallowed blocks. Its engines made a deep, sour tone. The city's lights dimmed as if swallowed. Ethan's mouth went dry. He had never seen a ship that big except in old pictures. The hull had markings he did not know. It hovered above the river like a floating cliff. Small craft peeled off from its belly and scanned the streets below like beetles. Inside the archive, the Visor's lights answered the file. Ethan activated the projection. The Visor did not make images like a human screen. It made patterns in the air. He tuned the output. He fed the lock sequence and the map file together. On the terminal, the map pulsed. On the Visor, the same map flickered. Then the air above the city changed. Lines of light rose from the street and stitched themselves into the sky. For a breath, stars moved. A map from the old file bloomed across the horizon. Lines connected to the hovering hull. Points glittered where anchors might sit. People in the street looked up and cried out. Ethan felt a strange heat in his chest. The map did not belong to him. It did not belong to the men in dark coats. It belonged to the old makers. The projection was small and weak from the bench, but the city saw it. The map above spelled a path. It pointed to an anchor off the coast, a place where the water met the deep blue and where old metal slept. A voice came over the archive speakers, thin and crisp. Unidentified projection detected, it said. Then, louder, the voice cracked with command. All units, mark that map. The anchor lock is active. Secure the site. Ethan's hands tightened on the Visor. He could run. He could destroy the chip and bury the secret. Or he could follow the map and try to reach Nyla first. If the anchor held stores, others would arrive by the hour. If he burned the chip, he might lose Nyla forever. He thought of the men in the doorway the first night. He thought of Captain Hale's still face. He thought of Dr. Sarah, who had given him a keycard and a small smile of worry. He thought of Maya carrying Nyla in the van. He thought of the light on the Visor and the first small word Nyla had whispered. Ethan stood. He closed the terminal and slipped the Visor into his coat. The archive alarm screamed like a thing in pain. Outside, the hull above the river released another pulse. The city lights flickered as though someone had closed a giant eye. Footsteps raced down the corridor. Boots hit metal with hard time. A radio crackled. All hands, contain the breach. Keep the map intact. Do not let private parties access anchor coordinates. Ethan moved to the heavy iron door. He looked back at the racks, the sleeping machines, the old labels. He felt the weight of choice like a stone at his chest. He could destroy the map. He could use it to bargain. He could try to reach Nyla at the anchor before the others did. He pushed the heavy door and ran into the tunnel. The map above the city still glowed. Lines of people pointed up and shouted names. A child on a roof pressed small hands to his face and trembled. Ethan ran toward the river. He ran toward a place marked on the sky map, an anchor that might hold Nyla's kind, or the power to free them, or to bind them. Behind him, alarm screamed and boots chased. Above, the giant hull turned like a predator. The anchor's point lit in the map. The path was open now, and 1,000 hungry eyes would walk it. Ethan ran until his legs burned. The river was close now. The map in the sky pointed to a low island where old metal broke the waves. Lights from the huge hull still hung over the city like a dark moon. People on roofs shouted and pointed. Sirens screamed. He reached the shore and found Dr. Sarah and Maya already there. A line of small boats cut through the dark water. Men and women pushed them hard. They wore no big badges. Their jackets were plain. They moved like neighbors who had learned to fight. Ethan saw a flag stitched into a jacket, a faded patch that read Remnant. He did not know the group, but he did not need to. Their eyes were steady and kind. "Ethan," Dr. Sarah called. "We saved a small crew. They heard the map. They came because you might need friends." Ethan handed her the visor. The device felt very light and very heavy at once. He still did not know exactly what it could do. He only knew it had changed the night. From above, smaller craft dropped like dark birds. They landed on the water near the island. People climbed onto old metal steps. A low hum rolled over the sea. At the island's center, a rusted tower rose. It had a ring of plates and a thick glass dome. That dome had a lock shape at its heart. The anchor, Captain Marcus Hale, was there too. He had not followed the men in black. He stood with his coat open and hands empty. His face looked older. Ethan's first impulse was to keep the visor away from Hale, but Hale's eyes met Ethan's and held no greed. "You're not alone," Hale said in a voice that had lost some of its edge. "We were ordered to secure anchors for the state. But orders do not answer everything. Tonight, I watched the man who saved a life." Behind Hale, Sergeant Vega and Lieutenant Grant looked torn. Corporal Brooks kept her hand near her tablet, but she did not move to stop anyone. The 4 soldiers were smaller in the open air. The sky made no room for their certainty. The remnant group moved like a single body. They set up a small shelter and a radio. They had old scanners and tools. A woman with a quick laugh and a scar above her brow stepped forward. "We can scramble the hull's lock long enough," she said, "but we need the key." Her eyes turned to Ethan and then to the visor. Ethan thought of Nyla. He thought of the first time she touched light and named it Small Sun. He thought of the map above the city and the way soldiers froze at her word. He did not want to give the device to anyone who would use it to open anchors for war. But he could not stand and watch the hull take Nyla away. He walked to the tower and inside the ring where the anchor sat today. The plates hummed with old power. Lines of old script ran like scars. Ethan felt the visor hum in his pocket. He held it in his hands as if it were a bird. Around the island, small guns and shields from the hull's craft began to glow. A low voice crackled from above. "Civilian party on the island. Surrender the key and the alien specimen for transfer." Hale did not answer. He walked toward the hull's craft and looked up. The craft lights flashed like eyes. Ethan turned the visor on and placed it near the anchor's surface. The device recognized patterns of where a key feels a lock. He fed the same simple pattern he had taught Nyla, not to open, but to speak. He watched the light on the ring. It moved like a skin finding its shape. Someone from the remnant touched a console and sent a signal. Their tools pushed into the hull scan. The hull answered with a wave of force. Small men in the water were thrown back by a pressure pulse. Someone cursed and clung to the rocks. Ethan felt the world tilt. He did what he could think of. He changed the visor's output to mimic a human will. He matched the old lock pattern to a new voice. He spoke not as a machine but as a plea. "We ask," he sent through the visor, "not to be opened by hunger. We ask protection for a life." The anchor shivered. The dome made a long, low sound. The hull above sent down a beam. The beam struck the island, and for a moment, it tested every human and tool below. A hush followed. Static filled the air. Radios hummed and cut. Then the beam folded back into the hull. From the radio on the remnant boat came a message. "We have legal cover. We will hold the line." A dozen small shapes rose from behind the island. Not a fleet of warships, but a string of civilian freighters and 2 older patrol boats. They had come from ports and docks. They had no big guns. They had families and steel and stubborn hearts. The hull sent a small landing team down. Men in armored suits moved toward the island. They called out orders. The 4 soldiers from that first night stepped forward into the open between the 2 groups. Captain Hale lifted his hands and spoke in a voice all could hear. "We will not trade people," he said. His words fell like a stone. "We are here to protect, not to hand over. The law is a shield for people, not a weapon to break them." There was a long counter breath. The armored team advanced. The remnant held their makeshift line. The patrol boats rolled slowly in, engines low and steady. The hull above made another test beam. The sky shimmered like a cold lake. Then something small and human happened. A child on a nearby deck called out a single simple word: "Stop." The child had seen Nyla wrapped in a blanket and had heard the visor hum. The word had no power in itself, but the child's voice carried the shape of a choice. People listened. The remnant pushed forward and locked onto the hull's small craft with old jammers. The hull's team hesitated. In a moment of human disorder, Ethan used the visor again. He did not open the anchor. He used the device to paint a small safety pattern into the ring, a code the hull systems read as neutral. The code told any ancient machine that the key holder had a claim protected by many human lives. It was a bluff built on truth. If the hull forced the issue, human hands would break its small craft and ruin its plans. The hull's commanders calculated and decided that cost was too high. Their landing team pulled back. The big ship turned above and drifted away like a dock whale. It did not leave the sky entirely, but it moved far enough that the island's lights brightened. People on the boats cheered and cried. Ethan held Nyla close. She peered from the blanket and tilted her head. A small pale light grew on the east horizon. It cut the dark like a blade. Nyla's visor hummed softly. Her fingers opened. She whispered, "Small sun." The first thin strip of sunrise spilled over the water. It touched her face. For a long, silent breath, Nyla stared. Her lips parted. Tears fell like small beads that made wet tracks on her skin. Around them, people watched in quiet wonder. Captain Hale stepped close and looked at Ethan. He reached out and took the visor in his hands, not to take it away, but to hold it like a promise. "We keep this safe," he said, "not to lock the sky, but to guard life." Ethan nodded. He did not know what would come next. The hull might return. Anchors might lure ships. But in that small, bright hour, humans stood together. They had no empire above them, no vast fleet of perfect machines. They had boats, patched radios, and stubborn hearts. Nyla lifted her face to the new sun. She saw a thin gold line on the water. She made a sound that was not a word and not a song. Ethan watched the light touch her eyes. He saw a new shade cross her face, the first true color of morning. The remnant shouted, "Hold the line." From a small radio someone answered, steady and quiet, "We don't trade people." The sun rose a little higher. The city behind them slowly woke to the news. For now, the sky belonged to those who chose to protect.